for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming. We'll begin with our public comment section. We do have one person who has signed up to deliver public comment to the board. So, sir, if you would please come down to the microphone. I'll remind you to please identify yourself by name and town, and then deliver your remarks. Not here. Okay, sorry. In that case, I guess we'll move on. That brings us to the report of the secretary. May I have a minute? Excuse me. May I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of our last meeting?
I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of Wednesday, December 1st, 2021.
I'll second, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa. Comments or questions? I did note one thing, and let me just see if it has been corrected since the copy that we got, but it was in the superintendent's report. Yes, number 2 under superintendent's report, I believe you reported that we had 20% of our students, not 20 of our students.
Yes.
So that should say 20% that were vaccinated in the clinic.
And it looks like it should be limited capacity, not
Under-
limiting.
Under what number?
On the same thing, number 2, go down a couple lines. Winter athletics, there will be limiting capacity, should maybe be
Should
limited.
be limited capacity.
Limited capacity, yes, yes. Good catch. Once again, we had a decent amount of information in these.
Yeah. There's a lot.
That's all I noticed in my read-through.
Same.
Anybody else? Okay, in that case, all in favor? I see 6 hands. Thank you. That's 6-0. That moves us into the report of the chair. The only item I have is the mention of the fact that we did have our town officials meeting.
2 weeks ago, right?
Yes, it was a couple weeks ago.
Last week.
Sorry, last week, yes, December 8th. That's exactly what that says. And we had a couple of folks at it, if you would. Who was there? I was there.
I can give a quick update.
Yes, please do, Kate, that's awesome.
It was a pretty short meeting. We heard from South Berwick, and they're gonna have a new town manager. He's already started, but just sort of light hours. He's traveling from a distance, and he'll be starting full-time in January. From Mike Sullivan in Elliott, they are looking for a new school resource officer for the middle school. There's some hoops to jump through for that, but hopefully we can look forward to that in fall of 2022. They also talked about the paving project on 236 and coordinating schedule for voting at Marshwood Middle School. That's pretty much it.
Sounds good.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That concludes the report of the chair and moves us into the report of the superintendent.
Thank you very much. To start off with, we want to have a continuation of the student data conversation we started last week. So 2 weeks ago, pardon me. We talked about Elliott Elementary School, Central School, and Marshall Great Works School. So today, Heidi is going to present the Marshall Middle School and the Marshall High School data. So Heidi, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. I'll try to keep this as non-repetitive as possible, but please stop me if you have questions along the way. So this is kind of similar to what I went over last time. It's just some reminders about where we are in terms of the assessment picture in the state. At the middle school and in 11th grade for science, we were using the MEA. It's no more. We're using NWEA, at least for the short term. And one of the things we have to consider going into next year is, given the nature of NWEA and the kind of data it provides us, do we want to use it in some additional non-required grades like we currently use the STAR assessment? And that's just up for consideration right now. It's completely optional. There we go. So what about the SAT? I think that's one of the big questions that a lot of people are wondering about. So prior to a couple of years ago, the SAT for a good length of time served as the grade 11 or third year of high school Maine educational assessment. And all students in the state of Maine took the SAT. Sometime in the last year, I can't remember the exact date, the Maine State Legislature passed LD 277, which was an act to discontinue the use of the SAT in Maine schools. So essentially, the bill prohibits the Department of Education from using the SAT as the state assessment. And there's a lot of reasons why they made that decision. I'm not privy to all of them, but I know there had long been concern about using an aptitude test as an achievement test. I think that's the crux of it. So what we have been doing internally here in our district is continuing to offer that school day administration of the SAT and having that be an optional thing that not every student has to take, but interested students, we still try to make that opportunity available to them, and that's true for the PSAT as well. It's also been a little bit complicated by COVID and the fact that many colleges are now test optional or test free, and so that is changing the way kids think about the SAT, I think. And it's not that the SAT isn't still helpful. It's still really important for merit scholarships, for D1 athletics, for other things that kids might be interested in, but I think that where it was once considered kind of every kid should have this in their back pocket, that's changed a little bit right now. Maybe?
Do we happen to know where the state is with the development of that alternative assessment?
The replacement assessment?
Yeah.
So it's going to be the same answer as the MEA Empower that we talked about
Okay.
last time, which is they're developing it kind of, part of this law is the charge to develop a new assessment kind of from the ground up. We really think it's probably going to be a 5 to 6 year process before we have a field tested benchmarked assessment.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
going to be a while. So I think we're going to be using the NWEA at least for the next, I would say, 4 to 6 years, provided that the federal government chooses to continue to grant us a waiver to use it in the manner that we're using it. This is just a reminder, the things we talked about last time we were here a couple weeks ago. NWEA is a norm-referenced formative assessment, so it gives you a percentile rank in comparison to all the other students across the United States who take the NWEA, and it'll compare. And so I think what you're going to see when you look at the data today is that the data looks really good, and there's some reasons for that when you think about it being a norm reference test rather than a criterion reference test that measures proficiency of particular standards. Again, the NWEA is broken down into these 5 quintiles, with the sort of top 3 quintiles considered on or above grade level, if you will. So how did our kids do? So, oops, wait, go back. There we go. So this is the data for grades 6, 7, 8, and 11 from this fall's assessment. So looking at math and language arts, you can see those numbers look actually pretty good. And that would be the percentage of students that hit at least that 40th percentile or 41st percentile on the NWEA fall administration. So I think I mentioned a couple weeks ago that one of the questions that's kind of out there in the world is how useful is the NWEA as a tool for grade 11? And there's some concern that kids may kind of top out the test. And I spoke a little bit with the NWEA rep, and she tried to reassure me that they've done a lot of work on that and that the test bank has improved from where it was several years ago. I think we'll see how that goes statewide. Like I said, those percentile ranks, while I know our kids are really smart, those numbers are high comparatively, and that's a good thing, but it may not necessarily accurately reflect the state standards proficiency because of the fact that it's a norm reference test. So when you look at student performance across states and across demographics, our kids in the Northeast typically do better. And I think you start to see that more and more in high school. So that's just something to think about as we think about what these numbers might mean. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is, I think that what the change in the assessment picture at the state has done is it's really allowed us to sort of step back and think about what kind of data we need to be looking at and what kind of data is going to be helpful in terms of us supporting our kids. One of the big topic areas that we have been focusing on in terms of our leadership work and our professional development this year is really taking a look at MTSS, which stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. And it's kind of a rebranding and broadening of the RTI, or Response to Instruction, Response to Intervention approach, that really encompasses not only the academic support, but that social emotional support and the behavioral support that we know that kids need. So it's more of a wraparound way of thinking. And that has caused us to start asking some really good questions. I've been a part of several conversations up here at the high school around, well, let's look at course progress data and let's triangulate that with attendance data and really try to get our arms around why kids are not being successful in particular areas. The counselors have had some really great conversations about what kinds of mental health data might they be able to collect to get a better sense of how kids are doing in terms of their social emotional wellness and learning right now. So there's the middle school and high school, they don't have a data wall per se the way that the elementary teachers do, but they're having some great conversations and really starting to think more broadly about what data they might need to be looking at. So I just wanted to throw that in there sort of to balance out the official NWEA state assessment picture. There's a bunch of other stuff we're looking at too, so.
I'm sorry, Heidi, are we finding the tools to collect that data? Is it sort of that in the decision-making process?
I think it depends on what you're looking at. Some of it's very homegrown, like, do we know that every kid in the high school has an adult that they feel connected to? Like, how could we get our hands on that? How could we figure that out? How could we ask teachers or ask kids? And, you know, so some of it's very homegrown. As I think I mentioned last time we met, we do have access to the SEL survey tool through Panorama, which would go to parents, staff, and students, and I think that is something we want to consider doing maybe in the spring to kind of get a sense of where we're at. And the counselors honestly have been coming up with some kind of creative ideas that they want to try to kind of figure out how to track some of the subgroups and interesting things that they see happening right now.
And that will be a future report when we do the school counseling kind of update of the work we've done all year long, which will kind of tie a lot of those loose ends together. So there's been a great deal of work going on in that area.
And the school counselors have access to a lot of, high-level approved, used in research sort of tools too.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, any other questions? Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And again, we will share the spring results as well later in the school year when we have the second wave of testing.
Heidi, just one more quick question. In terms of the NWEA assessments, I see that it's against kind of looking at how we come in versus other schools in the nation and other students in the nation. What about, do they also give, like, for your state as well, comparison?
They will in the spring.
Okay.
They'll give us there'll be a growth measure and a spring measure. We're in a weird place right now with it because the state hasn't done any benchmarking yet, so they haven't said 55th percentile equals proficient or 39th percentile equals proficient. They haven't set those performance bands, and until they do, it's hard to make comparisons. I mean, we can go on and compare like raw to how the state did last spring, the first time we took it. They won't post that data again till this spring. I didn't find the last spring data to be the best data set to look at because of the testing conditions.
Right.
I thought fall was better because it's like,
Yeah.
here we are, we're in school, it's a good place to start from. So I think in the spring, when I come back and talk about spring data and growth, I may be able to share that state comparison data. They have their whole vetting process where they sort of scrub it and check it and then post it on their portal. That takes a little time.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully they'll be getting faster at it, because the great thing about this test is you get the data immediately, like the same day, so, at least we do internally, so.
Right. Great, thank you. Yep.
Yeah, Heidi, you may have mentioned it, and forgive me if I'm reiterating it, but we still will offer the SAT
Yeah.
to students on an optional basis,
Mhm.
to be able to do that as well. So.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Next on my agenda is just sharing the sad news that Kathy Locke will be retiring from Marshwood Middle School. Kathy's been a longtime family consumer science teacher. She's really just been a key member of that team in that building. Done a great job, with the basic life skill things that that we think are so important. Whether it's the cooking or sewing, the work that she's done with the veterans in the Veterans Day Assembly. I mean, she's really been an impetus behind that in the past. So just really a tough loss for us, but we want to wish Kathy the best. And so big shoes to fill.
Yeah,
Yep.
very big.
Next, just a brief Alice update. So last week I sent out a letter just kind of updating the community where we were with Alice and our school safety work. We will schedule individual building meetings in January where families can have an opportunity to kind of come in and sit down with kind of our trainers and the local police departments to be able to talk a little bit about Alice and answer some specific questions that they may have. I just want to be clear that Alice isn't the type of plan that we post on the website. And because that's obviously from a security standpoint, we need to be able to keep what we do so people don't know what we're doing, obviously for reasons. So I just want to make sure people understand that. Obviously, some bigger conversations. We have a meeting tomorrow morning where we're looking at our district-wide crisis plans and trying to find a way to digitize that, and looking at a possibility of being able to create a digital map of the entire school buildings across the district so that each classroom you can click on, and so if there were a crisis, there'd be a panoramic view of the entire classroom so that people would be able to see what the classroom looks like. Where are the water shutoffs, where are the fire extinguishers, where are the fire alarms, so a great deal of data. So we're getting some more information about that. We've asked Sergeant Upton to join us, as well as Chief Moya, just to be able to find out if that would be helpful as we kind of build our crisis plan together. But this is some of the work that kind of is going hand in hand with Alice, to be able to really spend some time looking at the crisis interventions that we're doing across the district. So, questions anybody might have about that? Again, it's not a topic that people rush to talk about, but it's important that we have these conversations to keep our students safe. The relief we had with staff. I did my best to meet every staff in every building face to face. I did not make it fully to the middle school. I was behind there. But just to say, look, this is why we're doing this. It was my decision to do this in the middle of a pandemic. Obviously there's stressors being the pandemic and adding another stressor, but the overwhelming sentiments from the staff was that they were thankful that we're doing this deep dive and really looking at a crisis plan, what we can do to keep the safest environment possible. So,
Absolutely.
Very good, thank you.
next, just kind of an RFP, which is a response for proposal update on our food service. So we've had a 5-year contract that we went out with an RFP 5 years ago with Chartwells. That is up now, and so at the end of this year, pardon me. And so we've kind of put a new RFP together. We have a committee of people that are going to be involved with that process, and just kind of want to go over the dates with everybody. So tomorrow is kind of our pre-bid conference, so anybody who's interested in bidding and doing an RFP will come tomorrow, and that's our opportunity to kind of ask questions. So Ryan and I will sit down and meet with them. We'll have specific questions that they may have, and get really a chance for them to kind of pick our brains a little bit before the process starts. We'll create a visitation day where the vendors can come look at our facilities. We'll take them around to the different buildings, just to be able to see, kind of how things are structured, like what does lunch at Central School look like compared to what lunch maybe at the Marshwood Middle School may look like. What do the kitchens look like? What are the facilities? Those types of things. By January 7th, all bids are due at the superintendent's office by 1 o'clock. January 2022, I didn't have an exact date for this yet, but there may be a potential visitation. So for us, we might get 3 companies that come in and say, look, here's what we'd like to offer, and we want to be able to go on site to actually see them in action. We want to see what it really looks like, talk to students, talk to administration, kind of get a sense of really what the story is, so that will be scheduled at a later date. We'll set actually an interview up where we'll bring the vendors in and have some questions and answers, have some set questions, give us an opportunity to talk about the criteria, like what are we trying to achieve when we do this, to be able to kind of get an idea of what our goal is. And then we would really like to, by February 16th, that should be 2022, not 2020, I'm sorry. We can't go back in time. But just to be able to have that vote for the full board to be able to accept whatever recommendation that the committee comes up with. Some of the questions I think that I will pose to the committee and just I would talk to everybody is, who do we want to have be involved with that process? Do we want to have students involved with that? Do we want to have middle school students involved with that? Do we want to have current food service employees who have done this in the past to be involved? And so what I will do tomorrow is I'll send out an email to the committee and just kind of gather the feedback from everybody and try to get the committee together before we get rolling with everything else. So does that make sense?
Sounds good.
Fantastic. Number 5, and I cannot be any more clear than this. This has nothing to do with COVID. This is a Maine law that was passed around childhood immunization. So it is not COVID related in the least. It's not mandating COVID vaccinations in the district. I can't not be any more clear about this.
Yep.
This is childhood vaccinations or immunizations that need to be done in order for students to attend school. And the state of Maine created a deadline and said, you must have all these vaccinations or immunizations in place by, December 1st, 2021. And so that date is come and gone at this point. And so what we've tried to do is work with families, letting them know that this has to happen. And so we're at the point now where we need to kind of create that drop dead date where we saying it that way, a final deadline.
Yes, correct.
Sorry, a final deadline for that. Where there eventually comes a point where the state of Maine says children cannot come to school if they're not vaccinated, and so or immunized. One of the things that's different is that a few years ago there used to be kind of a philosophical objection caveat with the law, and if people didn't philosophically believe with vaccinations or immunizations, they did not need to do that. That has been removed now. And so now it's medical, and I believe religious is the other, and our nurses are working with that. And so we're sending out information to families. A letter was sent home on Monday. A lot of this is just getting the paperwork into the school. I mean, it's people have done it, but just getting the paperwork in. And so we've sent our first wave of kind of mass mailings out. We will do another one. But I think, a lot of districts have set this in stone earlier than this. I think we've tried to be a little bit more flexible. Obviously, with the pandemic, this is tough timing. And so what I am going to propose and share with the board is that January 21st is kind of that moment in time where we say that must be taken care of. If not, then you will not be able to come to school at the start of second semester, and that's kind of the semester break for everybody.
Yep.
And that is the last thing on earth that I want, I think that any of our administrators want, our nurses want, but we have to be compliant with Maine state law.
Yep.
And so we've been in the gray area a lot. We're trying to work with people and be compassionate. There's also the caveat that if people are in the process of getting immunized, and there's some paperwork that they can do for that to be able to meet the criteria, because in theory, it could take up to 180 days for people to get immunized, or they can't get into the doctor. So there's some paperwork that people can do just to meet that. So it doesn't mean that on that day you must have everything taken care of. There's a process, but we just need to be really clear about it. So obviously uncomfortable. Again, nothing to do with COVID, but just want to make sure that everyone kind of knows kind of where we're at. This obviously is not going to be received positively by all, but it's something that we are required to do.
Yep.
Any questions anybody might have about that? Okay, and so Joe and I had a wonderful conversation on Friday and just felt like, boy, there's just a lot of stuff, and it's not always the fun stuff and good stuff. And so what we talked about was like maybe providing some updates on things that are coming up that are some positive things that maybe people need to know about, or an opportunity to kind of, want to be a part of, to be able to see. So I just wanted to share some kind of upcoming events. At Elliott Elementary School on the 17th of December, there's going to be a float parade that's going to be held, I believe, right on the baseball field there. tied to some of the reading that they've been doing right now. Central School, their annual Nutcracker, which has been going on for years, will be held virtually, and that will be released to the community. I believe on Monday, I think the 20th, Marshall Great Works School will actually be walking to the Southburg Food Pantry to make a delivery, which is, fantastic. And then on the 21st of December, there's going to be a chorus concert at Marshall Great Works School as well. So just wanted to share that information with everybody, some neat things that are coming up.
Is that going to be in person this time, the Great Work School concert, or is it virtual?
I believe that they're going to, I don't know.
Yeah.
I will find that out. My sense is that it will be a virtual option, but, last night we had the middle school concert here in the auditorium, which was nice. I don't think we probably would not be bringing families into the school during the school day. I would not think at this point, but I will find that out.
I just want to add that conversation we had was spurred by input from several of the other board members. That wasn't me. I didn't want to get credit for that.
Okay. And then just a kind of reminder, but now, worth noting, Reads Across America stopped in Elliott on Monday. An incredible sight to see. So Reads Across America starts, I believe it's Columbia, Maine, where they make wreaths and bring them to Hamilton National Cemetery. And so there's a procession that goes from up Maine to Washington, D.C. If you were to see the entourage, there's probably, I would say, at least 15 different police departments from across the state of Maine that were there. There are state troopers from Delaware, and so there's this procession that goes down. I believe that they said there was 10 18-wheelers filled with wreaths that were being dropped off, and then also Gold Star families were made the trip as well with that. So opportunity to be there. Elliott Elementary School created a song around Reads Across America a few years ago, and so they shared that song and sang that for everybody. That day, just a really, really special event. I just need to reach out to Ann Schisler for really kind of taking the song and really trying to incorporate it into the schools. She had gone and brought out her class when it was at the Kittery Trading Post and really wanted to kind of take that next step. And so just a wonderful day. Just absolutely wonderful day.
Sure it is.
And then just under the other category, first, I just wanted to again recognize that Diane DeCredico's last day will be tomorrow in the central office. Diane's been a longtime employee and just, for me personally, just been a great support over the years of someone that we really just will struggle losing. I hate to see her go, but I really want to wish her the best in her retirement. And then some COVID news. The SOP will be updated, and so we're kind of all holding our breath to see what that looks like and what that means. Not really sure at this point in time, and so we expect over the next 3 weeks that will take place. One thing that came across our desk at the end of last week, which is concerning, is they made the determination not to pool test next week. And so what that means is our last pool test was Monday and Tuesday of this week. And so while in its own that seems minor, what really concerned me is that what that means is that pool testing exemption is gone for 2 weeks. And I really struggle with the decision. I don't know across the state how to manage all of this. I'm just from MS80 35, that is a big issue for me. First and foremost, we have built trust with our families. We have talked about pool testing, and then all of a sudden to have that removed for 2 weeks is very concerning. The other part of it is that we have students who are involved in school activities for the next 2 weeks. Because there isn't class, it doesn't mean the kids aren't going to be around. So for example, if a child were playing basketball, let's say, and there were a positive, they would not be able to continue to play basketball because the pool testing exemption would be gone at that point in time. It would only be those people that were vaccinated. So this is a huge shift. I wrote a letter and heard back from Dan Schuta today, but just really voicing my concern and my concern not only for the student safety, but also for the community and also for our staff. That's another layer of burden that's being put on our school staff, that over this break, we're still having to manage this. And so it takes away that ability, because if you were to have, let's say, a basketball game, you could, in theory, have that roster and say, these people are vaccinated, these people are pool tested, and it really shrinks the people that you need to contact trace for. And so that really impacts that. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that. I will meeting with Mr. Buzzell tomorrow. And Mr. Buzzell is going to have to share that certainly with our families through athletics, and I'll have to put it in the next letter that I send home regarding any positive COVID cases. So I do not think that's good news. That's concerning to me, but I did want to share that with you this evening.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, has there been any discussion from the state as far as accepting a rapid antigen as a negative test
So
coming down the pipe?
I have not
seems-
heard that.
Okay.
I'm going to, I don't know,
Okay.
but I would not be shocked, and this is just John Caverly
Right,
projecting.
yep,
I would not be shocked if some of those things were what the new SOP may include.
yep,
I don't know that, but that seems to, there was certainly some sentiments around that.
okay.
You know, and so I think that gives some flexibility. What I did ask, which was a little bit of a frustration, was that during the Thanksgiving break, there was not pool testing that week, but I don't get this wrong, but I believe if there was a positive, it's for someone who was pool tested, they could take 2 Binax tests to be able, and that
Okay.
would keep them
Okay.
able to do things.
Okay.
They did not allow that exemption over this break, because my understanding is that because it's a 2-week break roughly rather than a 1-week break.
Mhm.
So I had asked if they would reconsider putting that in as one of the caveats to be able to have
Yeah.
people continue.
Yep.
I got it.
Especially testing, PCR is so backed up, like you can test on a Monday and not get results back for a week,
Yes,
so,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so, just so people understand, and we have about 1,300 people currently that are pool testing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a
Yeah,
large
that's
number.
a lot.
So, just so everybody is aware of that.
Is that the company that decides that they're not testing, or who?
I don't know the answer 100%.
Okay.
I think it may have been a conversation between the CDC, DHS, and the Department of Human Services, the company, and the Department of Education. I think there's probably a group of people that made that decision.
Okay,
And I'm sure, and look, I see this much on
Right.
how it affects MSD 35. There may be bigger issues that I'm not aware of,
right,
but I just, for us, there is an impact, you know.
Yep.
That stress doesn't go away, it gets put on some other people, and that's what's
Exactly.
happening here,
Yeah.
so.
yep,
Exactly.
okay, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Trevor?
So currently in student government right now, we're working on the wellness block that I talked about last week, and we're finalizing the survey, which should be coming out within the next week. We're just finalizing the data, which it should. And this past Friday and Monday, we had a couple of the people in student gov walk around advisories and talk about student gov and just try to get people to start going to our meetings on Monday, as we're kind of lacking participation there. We're also seeing peer tutoring starting to run up, and tutors are starting to email the people at which they're tutoring. PSAT scores came out for juniors this week. Definitely, I think it's like the national PSAT, I'm not sure what the specific what it's called, should be reached in the next month or 2, I think that's right. And then, on the topic of sports, there was basketball games last night against York. Girls were away. Unfortunately, they lost by 12. Boys were home and 150-148. Currently in the gymnasium, wrestling is having a match, or whatever it's called, like it's a meet against
meet.
Body Eagle and Kennebunk. We watched like approximately 30 minutes of it, and it was not going too hot against Bonnie Eagle. Hockey started off to a good start. They're currently 2-0, and North Track had its first meet 2 days ago. I've heard it was a little bit interesting because usually in the past there's usually like 10 schools that go to the indoor track, but I think with this one it was very little. That concludes my report.
Thank you.
Thank you, and that concludes my report as well.
That moves us to correspondence. We have none to report on this meeting. And then that moves us into the report of the committees. First up is Finance and Facilities, which met earlier this evening for what can only be described as an action-packed hour. I'll give a quick sort of overview. We started with a review of the annual report that Ryan provided for the 2020-2021 calendar year for the year ending June 30th, 2021. We went through that. That report has been submitted to the auditors, and they're in the process of examining it. They will produce their final report, and I understand we're on a track to get that report from them sometime in February.
That's correct.
So we'll look
Our
for
plan
that.
is February 16th to have that presented.
February 16th, okay.
That's correct.
Good, excellent, okay. So that was the first part. We looked at 2 months' worth of data for the district dashboard. By the way, I don't mean to steal the mic. We have other folks on the F&F committee if someone wants to talk to
Please.
these.
I don't think anybody's fighting with you right now to.
No, not the numbers.
Well, I'll say that the district dashboard, end of November, the numbers for budget revenue and expenditures are within a few dollars of each other, so that looks good. The general fund cash balance is good. We have a 3 payroll month coming up in December, though, so that's going to dip again before it recovers in January. We're still waiting on some federal grant reimbursements, so that looks like we're a little bit more in the hole than we should be. Adult ed is in the red as well, but that's in large measure because we didn't send out the bill to Kittery for their share for the last quarter, so that will get rectified shortly. School nutrition is doing really well. We have a higher participation rate, and we're getting full federal reimbursement on all meals. So that's actually running well up in the green, which is something we haven't seen. In terms of the general fund financial statements, we should be at about 58% of our budget left, and we're at 59.4, so we're in good shape there as well. But again, with a 3 payroll month coming, that will catch up. That's the high-level summary. Did I miss anything important?
No.
No, okay, good.
I think the big thing also is that we did get positive news that the insurance company will cover a lot
Oh,
of the
good.
damages that we're taking
Yes.
care of through the mold at the middle
Good.
school and the Great Works School, so that's
Yes,
everything.
that was good news.
Yes.
Yeah, we should talk about the facility update if one of you wants to chime in on that.
Yeah, all right, I
Go ahead,
certainly
Heather.
can. So in terms of the facility update, the custodial position update, we have the retirement of Cheryl Woodman and the hiring of Stacy Davis, who was previously one of our bus drivers. The resignation of Joey Emerson, and then we have the hiring of Gregory Griffin. Like you mentioned before, mold insurance claim status has been updated, so that's good. A couple of rooms in the Marshwood Middle School will be worked on over the break, which there needs to be some walls removed and some cleaning done, and that will happen in the middle school and Great Works School, I believe. We are a go-ahead with the Green Mile Solar Project. Typically, we spend per year about around $250,000 to $300,000 per year in electric costs. This should save us some money. The goods to create this project have increased, but it's still a really great deal, and still will bring some savings across the board in terms of our electricity costs in the future, so that's moving ahead. We have an MOU that's being worked on with the town of Elliott regarding voting. That was mentioned in the town meeting that we had recently. And also, actually, this morning I saw them, all the new windows arrived over at Marshwood Middle School, so I'm assuming that they're starting to work on replacing those windows. Transportation update, driver position update, resignation of Tracy Davis, obviously, because she's moved on to another position within our district. Hiring of Timothy Harriman, resignation of Susan Darcy, and then the hiring of Dominic Wallingford. In terms of food service, which was mentioned before, there's going to be like a bid conference type meeting tomorrow, I think. And we welcome our new food service director, Karen Finkst from Chartwells, and that should do it. Oh, and if I was just going to give another update, the school board now has a website link on the district website. It's live. Thank you to Lisa and Joe for participating in our little subgroup. We have polished and repurposed some materials that just never happened to make it into a website form. Thank you to Jeremy Poole for answering the 1 million emails per day for the last few weeks. And if anyone has any updates that they would like to see happen in terms of what we've got on there, then please shoot myself, Joe, or Lisa an email, and we'll work on that. So thanks.
And thanks to Heather for heading up that committee. That was no
Yes,
small amount of work.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys for
Thank
doing
you.
that.
Sure was.
Had the vision.
Yes.
Yep.
Made me realize.
Yes, you did.
Should we mention that we have 2 folks pitching in and getting their driver's licenses for bus driving?
Oh, yes.
I thought that was worth mentioning. Mr. Cormier and Mr. Gratian are either already certified or in the process of getting certified
Oh, that's
to drive trips on the weekends. Thank you for that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
That's great, thank you, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you. That concludes the Finance and Facilities Report. Ed Policy is next. Next meeting is December 22nd. That meeting is happening.
We did today, yep.
Yeah, good, cool, excellent. And we have a couple of policies up for second reading tonight, I believe. So we'll
Yes.
get to those under new business. Anything else to say about Ed Policy from the folks on the committee?
Probably can't be there.
Okay. Okay. Thirdly, the Wellness Committee / SEL Committee. Next meeting is at the beginning of January. So nothing new to report tonight, right?
Nope.
Okay, good. And the fourth thing is the Advisory Committee, which Heather has already given us the update on,
Oh, is that what that is?
which is the update to the school board portion of the website. Okay, that's the report of the committees and brings us to new business. May I please have a motion with regard to the second reading of GCJ?
I move to approve the second reading and discussion of policy GCJ, professional staff probation and continuing teacher contracts.
Second, please.
Kate, thank you. Okay, no changes since the first reading? Any questions or comments? Very good. All in favor? That is 6-0. Thank you. May I have a motion, please, with regard to GCF?
I move we approve the second reading and discussion of policy GCF, professional staff hiring.
Second, Heather.
Thank you, Heather. Same thing, no changes since our last reading. Any comments or questions? All in favor? 6-0, thank you very much. And then our last item of new business is with regard to the Marshwood High School concert band and a trip.
Awesome.
So
May I have a
great.
motion, please?
I move to approve the Marshwood High School Concert Band and Vocal Ensemble to participate in the Heritage Music Festival in New York City, New York, in April 2023. The actual dates to be determined for 3 nights and 4 days. Yay.
Wow.
That's awesome.
I'll
second.
Kate?
Can I make a comment?
Please do.
So,
This sounds very exciting.
yeah,
Yeah, I want to go.
David gave me a start because I read that, I'm like, David, I don't know if we can go in, you know,
April?
this April. I appreciate the enthusiasm, like, John, it's 2023, so like, okay, phew, I felt much better. But I did bring it up tonight of their concert that he and Bonnie had last Thursday, which was just fantastic. If anybody had a chance to be there, just to see the incredible Sleigh Ride was my favorite song by far, but just it was kind of a neat night. But David did give me a little bit of a start, and Rob kind of said, no, John, you're okay. So anyway, so a great opportunity, you know, and it's just good to start thinking about these things, getting back to normalcy for these students who can really pursue their passions. So
So
That's
great.
great.
I only have one comment, and you can guess what it's going to be. How many chaperones will be on
Yeah.
this trip?
I think that would be a conversation, absolutely, as we kind of start to have those detailed plans going forward. Yep, absolutely.
You can't start too early on that one after.
Yep.
And can school board be one?
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, I used to do trips like this as a school child, and this is great. I'm so glad that it's being rejuvenated because it sounds like it hasn't been done since 2016, 2012. So good for taking the initiative to plan ahead.
Do we know how many schools participate in this music festival?
David, do you know?
It sounds like something big.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a great thing. It just,
It honestly depends on how many people sign up through that travel company for that weekend. And each travel company offers their own festival.
Yep.
So no, I don't know how many
Okay.
groups, but it does include at least one complimentary trip that we would use to bring a nurse along with us, which we've done for several years just to help make sure that we take care of the kids and any medications and things like that. And that's been a real helpful thing, just to make sure that we're taking care of them in all possible ways. And then your question about chaperones, it's usually just based on the number of students going. We try to make it not more than 8 students per chaperone. So they have no more than 8 students that they're looking out for, county heads for, the city at meeting points, that kind of thing, to make sure that we have everybody and they're where they're supposed to be when we're going different places.
David, was it February 2020 with the last time you took the trip? Or was it 2019?
It would have been 2019 we went
To Florida, right?
To Disney. That
Disney.
wasn't a Heritage Festival.
Yeah.
But yeah, we went to Disney.
Yep.
Cool, very
Awesome.
cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Overdue.
Thank you.
Great.
Other comments or questions? All in favor? 6-0. Great, that's the end of the new business section, and it brings us to our building administrator check-in, and we have middle and high school tonight. Who wishes to go first?
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. I did notice David left the sound booth and moved his way down toward closer to the board as that was being discussed. But I think we're really excited. As you can tell, Mr. Gratian is, and probably a good segue for just a couple things I want to share tonight. I'm not sure what board member, because I have my old prescription glasses on, mentioned it feels good to resurrect. You know, and that word is kind of coming and being used a little bit more, and that's a little bit of the spirit of a couple things I wanted to share tonight. But it does feel good to start resurrecting some things, specifically things that students feel connected with and have some ownership toward. And so, as I do think Mr. Caverly shared with you, that one of our goals this year, now that we're back on site in real-time learning, is to get in the classroom as much as possible and to be in the classroom. And I was in an observation recently, and I just thought to myself, if I could take a minute tonight to kind of paint a picture of the classroom, because that's where the students are for a great majority of their time. And it just struck me as I watched the classroom and the teacher and the students, that feeling of resurrecting a little bit of normalcy, but also the intricacies of planning. So there was about 15 students in the classroom, and it struck me as the physical setup, even down to the angles of the seats that allow 3 feet away, but the convenience of collaboration and turn and talk. And the teacher was conferencing with a student one-on-one, while the rest of the class was working individually, but it kept breaking into little conversations like, what were we supposed to do with, or did you get, and projected on the screen were the instructions, and the Google Classroom, where our teachers are curating almost 100% of their curriculum, was the go-to place where if Johnny, it's always Johnny and Susie, right? Where Johnny turned to Susie and said, did you get? And they were able to, because literally of the design of the classroom, have a collaborative moment while the teacher is having that one-on-one time, and then in real time sending additional resources to the student's Google Classroom. So by the time that student came back and sat down, she had some information to work with. And about 20 minutes in, about half the class got up and moved to a breakout area across the hall where there happened to be a pod for a smaller group sharing of drafts for 10 minutes to stay within the 15-minute window. And then at the end of the class, hey, before you leave, please do the exit ticket. Just an app used as a quick formative assessment so the teacher can check in to make sure when we start tomorrow where students are with their understanding and how much gap we have to recover. And I don't know, I just thought that our students, everything down to the angle of the seats, the capacity that our teachers have developed with technology, and then having to worry about, we want to resurrect small group discussion and make sure it's under 10 minutes, and a seating chart note that will be done. I just thought, you know, as we are continue to endure this, what a great, and it just made me feel good, what a great snapshot. And that's being, you know, mirrored across the hall. And I just invite you folks to join on some of those rounds. You know, in my last thought, that would happen. And I just feel like what we're able to do within the lines from bell to bell is really pretty profound. And I hope that little anecdote illustrates both what our teachers are doing and how our students hopefully are feeling a little bit more normalcy in their day-to-day. The only other things I'd like to highlight, I think it was mentioned, our Hawk Block time, where halfway through second quarter, we have some data in our Hawk Block committee, again with restrictions. The original Hawk Block plan was a much more flexible sign up, teachers and students interacting as need, but we're still in restrictions with distancing and some of those things. So our Hawk Block committee has designed where we have created additional time with teachers and their classes where no new information is given, but it's more for remediation or acceleration. So our Hawk Block time is taking a little bit of an academic focus now, where we're able to address and provide more time with teachers and students together. And that began, I think, about a week ago, and it's going to continue for the next few weeks. So basically during Hawk Block, it's an 85-minute. They'll have a 40-minute, say that Hawk Block, I believe today, maybe 5 and 6. So they'll go with their period 5 teacher again for 40 minutes, 5-minute passing time, then they go with their period 6. And some students would just do some self-direction, some will have small group instruction, and it's for reinforcement. So we know coming back from the pandemic or the beginning of our, hopefully on the far end of it, the way we're going to recover learning loss and we're going to fill that gap is through that kind of intervention, small group, one-to-one, and as I think was mentioned, our peer tutoring, which is another example of student agency where a student resurrected that program, and we have a dedicated space in the library now for peer tutoring, and that program is up and running. Because during those Hawk Block moments that I mentioned, if you have a study hall, a teacher can sign you in to a small group if they have a prep period, or they could go to a peer tutor. So we're just trying to build in additional layers for that kind of intervention. And as we head toward break, as I just finish up our theme today, we had our faculty meeting, and in our advisories, we've been having some fun games, but it's about recognition and celebration of what we have been able to accomplish as we end of the year. And a lot of it is around that student agency. Our district musical, if you had a chance to see that, again, it was nice to have a stage and people in the auditorium. Winter concert that was mentioned, what I thought was wonderful, and David, who always does a great job, and we have a new addition this year, Bonnie Michaud, Mrs. Michaud, who is a wonderful addition. Athletics, I'm sure it's been talked about here, our championships, and boys soccer. Evidently, we have a football program that I wasn't really aware of. I checked it out in the yearbook. They do okay. So I don't know, was that 4 years in a row or something like that? I don't know if Trevor's been humble or not, but student recognition and all-state in soccer, and we had all-state in New England's across country was the first group to go to our New England. So I just feel like what students are seeing in the classroom, and then they're having these other opportunities, we hope that that's making them feel a little bit better. The student government, the projects that they're working on around the student exhibition of work, resurrecting a recycling program. And last thing today was we had our faculty meeting, and we had a presentation today that I'll just close with, I hope, again, like an illustration of what we're trying to do and the great work of the teachers and the grit of the students. Our non-instructional time and some of those areas, those common areas are suffering a little bit. Our bathrooms can get a little messy, and our common areas are, so some students came to us, and Mr. Daly took the lead on this, and they've created a program for maintaining a healthy community. So what they created was signage. They'll roll it out through advisory, and there's a QR code that you could hit with your phone, and it's a quick 2-question Google Doc where you can identify where the bathroom is and what the need is. There's some a need for towels, or maybe there's some graffiti. So from a 360, it's not just about a bathroom needing a towel, but it's about students coming and saying, hey, what can we do to help? And the creation of that little program is, I think, another example of where we are with continuing a return in this environment. So the only other thing I would share is, as I said, like last night, the basketball team played, the wrestling team was out. From a personal note, my second grader suffered a little bit of moderate cajoling at school because he wore his Marshwood basketball shirt to York's Coastal Ridge Elementary School today, so I'll have to leave here and make sure he's okay. But it was nice to be in the stands, and it felt pretty good. So we've got some other things to work on. We'll wait till after break, but just going into break, we really wanted to celebrate and recognize all the great work of the students and the staff.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask one quick question?
Yeah.
In regards to the Hawk Block, is there a student, some sort of student representation that offers feedback as far as?
Yeah, we just started to roll in student government, and they're focusing on designing a wellness hawk
Okay.
block specifically. Yeah,
Just as
so-
far as like how they think this remediation's going, or how they think, do you have, is there like some sort of a task force?
Yep, yep.
Okay.
I think that we feel like we're at that point where it's got a rhythm and got some things to work out. And so I know the Student Government Subcommittee of Wellness is helping design one. And then we did a little faculty survey, and a student survey is on the way, I think after break.
Okay,
Yep,
okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
I just want to give such a shout out to the educators, not just at the high school, but K-12. I just hear so many stories of the use of technology and just how brilliant and creative it is. I understand I mean, I know for myself, technology is like, oof, okay. But just how much everyone has just stepped up to use the technology to make everything better, even with all of the variables and challenges that we have in place. It's just brilliant, and I just really appreciate the effort. It's a lot of effort and energy that goes into all of that, and it's a lot of really, truly extra work, right, to figure all of that out on top of everything else that they're doing in terms of sharing curriculum and supporting students. So kudos to everybody.
Lisa, thank you so much for saying that. I would be remiss if we just didn't take a moment just to understand, how hard people are working to make those things happen. I mean, I know people pervasively are kind of at wit's end with the pandemic and are ready to put it behind us. I think in many ways, this year is significantly more difficult. The number of students that are out is more, and so just imagine every time you get that email that says, today there's 5 students out, that's a classroom that may have 4 other students that aren't there, which disrupts instruction, and that pressure on those staff members to be able to try to somehow keep that class moving forward, knowing that maybe 17% of your class isn't there that day, or the nurses making those phone calls, or the administrators trying to balance coverages, teachers are out. I mean, there's a lot that goes on. And I know everybody's working hard, but they're working hard in a lot of different ways. And I just would be remiss if we just didn't take a moment just to recognize that on one respect, it's so good that we're thinking about the next things, but we are in the middle of trying to keep that ball moving forward. And our staff, it works tirelessly, whether it's a bus driver, whether it's an administrator, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a speech and language pathologist. I mean, people are really working incredibly hard right now to keep things moving. And I know at times it feels like, the school, but there's a lot to kind of keep moving in the midst of this pandemic. So thank you for recognizing that.
Oh, 1,000%. And I think that I speak on behalf of most parents. It's hard for us to let everybody know in the schools all the time without, sending 1,000 emails and already overwhelmed teachers. But I think the sentiment across our community and our parent groups and our students actually is gratitude. So thank you.
Yep.
Well said.
Mr.
Thank you.
Creech?
Thank you once again for the opportunity to share some highlights for some of the wonderful things I think are happening at the middle school. I think there are 3 themes that are going to kind of come together with what I share with you tonight. I've heard it echoed several times already today that it's great to get a sense of normalcy coming back into our schools. We're having that happen at the middle school as well. And the part of education that's always resonated with me that I think is one of the most important things we do is teaching the whole child, and not just those great experiences that you were discussing that happen in the classroom and the academic portion, but the other things that we offer in schools that really kind of develops the whole child. And so I'm going to highlight some of those things. And the third piece that I think is really critical to get out of these highlights is that we're working very hard at Marshwood Middle School to grow voice, to grow leadership. There are some student groups and some staff leaders that are doing wonderful things to develop and build the culture in our school. And so I'm going to highlight some of those things for you. Of course, it's exciting for our students that our winter athletics, our clubs and activities are underway again. And if you watch them in the hallways and hear them when they're waiting for the late bus, you know, it's just a little buzz that happens. They're so excited to be out there and engaged in these activities. We are excited to say that the Marshwood Middle School Theater Department is back, and they're holding auditions. I think they had auditions the last 3 days with callbacks tomorrow for the Seussical Junior musical. Ms. Sharon is the drama director for that. 2 wonderful concerts that happened. On the 7th, we had our chorus concert. And on the 14th last night, we had our band concert. So congratulations to Chris Bisson and Caleb Burke on the wonderful job. I happened to go into one of the classrooms today and listen to Caleb Burke have the students listen to their performance last night and evaluate it. And if you could have seen their faces and how proud they were with their performance, it's just an incredible, it's not only an educational experience, but just to see the confidence built in them is wonderful. And the Wreaths Across America that Superintendent Cavalier mentioned, I was fortunate enough at another school to be a part of a celebration where we had a ceremony and we hosted the Wreaths Across America caravan. So the other day, led by Kathy Locke's enthusiasm, the entire Marshwood Middle School was out safely next to Route 236, and we saw the caravan, we had our flags and everything, and it was just, it was awe-inspiring, but what a tremendous tribute to the people who put all that work in for Wreaths Across America. Extending the theme that I mentioned a minute ago, so our chorus director, Chris Bisson, has been working with the chorus group, and they kicked off what is called a one-word challenge. They were working with a group called Courageous Steps Project. Connor Archer is the lead for that group. He lives with the challenges of autism, and really the theme this year has been to gravitate away from disabilities, but just talk about the challenges that we all face and try to look at life in a positive way. So the one-word challenge is underway. Every single member of our school community has been given a piece of poster paper. We're supposed to think of a word that best describes us, a positive word. Those words, once written down, are going to be a part of a videotape that will be played for the entire school. All those words will be posted in the cafeteria. And it's just a wonderful way to celebrate the positive things that we have to be thankful for in our school, and really appreciate that as a student-led initiative. Another student-led initiative by the Civil Rights team, led by Renee Cavalier and Katie Williams, was they had, I don't know if you had seen this on December 7th, but they have what's called the Day of Welcome. And during the Day of Welcome, it's really put together where the students had posters that really helped people be educated on the 6 protected categories and kind of educated our entire school. And during the Day of Welcome, there was a video that was played during hawk time. And then there were talking points that each of the teachers went over with the students to kind of educate them on the 6 protected categories. Again, a student-led initiative with support from adults. And then the last piece I want to share with you, which I think is a really cool thing, I've seen this done in other schools. Civil Rights team, once again, student-led initiative, soup to nuts, wanted to find a way to make sure that everybody that came into the building felt included, felt welcome, and felt celebrated. So what they're doing is they're having a celebration of anything that's familiar or a part of the culture for the students in our school. So the students met with me, told me the plan, they met with the team leaders, they met with the faculty, and then they stood in front of all the students in the cafeteria and announced, we want you to fill out this Google form and tell us what are the things throughout the year that your family or a part of your culture celebrates. Those things are all being taken by the Civil Rights team and are going to be displayed in the lobby. So it gives me goosebumps to describe these things, and I have to tell you these are student-led initiatives supported by some wonderful adults. And it just goes to show you those 3 things I mentioned before. Most importantly, building voice, leadership, and a culture and climate in our school which is inclusive and making people feel welcome. Very proud of all of them. And I'll end with, I wish you all a happy holiday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic.
Anything else from the board? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
That was awesome. I move to adjourn.
Second, Heather.
Heather, thank you. All in favor? That is 6-0. We are